It's to me this morning to talk about why, when we talk about trans people and sexuality, there is a tremendous silence. People know that they are probably supposed to be talking, at least somewhat, about sexuality when it comes to trans and non-binary and genderqueer people. I hear a lot of conversation about the fact that that's a conversation we should be having, and yet we mostly don't. And my question is, why? Why is this true? So I'm going to talk about the 3 reasons that I believe this to be true, and then I'm going to offer you 3 different remedies for what I think you can do to interrupt the silence and begin teaching and talking about trans and non-binary and genderqueer people and sexuality. The first reason is historical, right? And often, I speak at a lot of university campuses and I talk to people in health a lot. And a thing that people say fairly frequently is some version on all of a sudden there's trans. And it often comes with this sort of hand gesture like, it appeared from nowhere. There have always been people that we would recognize today as transgender and non-binary and genderqueer. But our history, and indeed our personhood and the words for us, were violently erased through the process of colonization. If you go back to the time before colonization swept across basically everywhere that you could reach by land or boat from England, France, and Spain, nearly every indigenous community or society had positive to neutral language and positive to neutral social roles for people that today we would understand as trans and non-binary, right? And then colonization happened. Even though I know and can prove through art and poetry and law that people like me have existed for millennia, I can't look back at anything between 1200 and 1900 that shows me any of my people, that gives me our history, our stories, or anything that was created by us so that we're able to know who we were. And so when we talk about why is there this all of a sudden everybody's trans thing, it's super important to me that people are able to acknowledge that it's not all of a sudden, right? This is the natural order reasserting itself. There's this idea that, you start at point A and you sort of finish at point B, and it's a little bit like going on Pimp My Ride, except most people don't get anything chromed. That's an incredibly new idea about how to be trans or non-binary or genderqueer. And, I hear from a lot of people sort of this idea that trans people can be finished, that you can do all the things and then you're done. Or you can do all the things and then you're real. And unlike our esteemed guest's mother, I don't curse a lot, in part because I have 3 children, and I'm really trying to hold on to that. But just this one time, I'm going to say that's some bullshit. The second reason that we have so little ability to talk, even as trans people, about sex and sexuality and trans and non-binary folks is because we were absolutely told not to, and the penalty for doing it was being exiled from any ability to access medical services, psychological services, legal remedy, or anything else related to transition in the sort of modern understanding. We are currently in a beautiful moment of what I have started to refer to as trans language chaos. I hear a lot of laughs of recognition. The first thing that people always want to know is, please tell me what I'm supposed to say, right? And the answer is, I can't tell you that. I don't work where you work. I'm not talking to the people that you're talking to. I don't know. You are going to have to do that work yourself by being in the room with the people and figuring out what's the language here. You have to figure out what are the words of this place. And some of that's going to be about acknowledging this language moment, and some of it is going to be about soliciting feedback from the people you're with and listening to it. You know, many of us who are professionals have spent a lot of time learning things and trying to get good at stuff. And we pride ourselves on the time that we've spent in our attempts. And let me say, none of that time is wasted, right? But when it comes to being able to say things in a way that the people in the room can listen, participate, and feel empowered, you have to actually, empowerment, like, you know, Jacqueline Friedman talks about faux empowerment, that sort of like you go girl thing. Actual empowerment in this case means giving the language power to the people in the room. Trans and non-binary people are so accustomed to having our needs about language ignored that even just doing that will be valuable and powerful to some of the people in any room that you're in. As educators, what you can do is you can, A, interrupt that medicalized narrative of assessment. You can encourage the people that you teach that assessing is not necessary when it comes to trans and non-binary people, and you can also build capacity in the medical professionals that you work with. And here's a place where things are going to start to feel familiar to many of you if they haven't yet, because a tremendously common thing that happens is a trans person or a non-binary person takes hormones and they experience a sexual side effect that they don't like. And when they explain this to their doctor, very often their doctor says, well, that's the cost of being a woman. I mean, listen, there are a lot of different delivery methods and formulations and dosages of exogenous hormones. And doctors need to know that if one is giving someone sexual side effects that they don't like, they can try some others. Here's where you get to say the thing that we all came here to say, which is that, hey, sexual pleasure is actually really important for humans. Because if you as sex educators are able to interrupt the narrative of all of a sudden trans, right, then it helps me as a trans person and other trans and non-binary and genderqueer people to not have to be giving that information for the first time, right? I'm up here, I have a microphone, they put a very nice light on me, I'm telling you, you probably believe me. I'm wearing a tie, I sound authoritative. Many of you are inclined to respect all of the various trappings of authority that come with this and think, oh God, I never really thought about that, but I suppose that's true. Huh, this is a new piece of information for me, right? But you are also all authorities in the communities from which you come, or you will be if you're students, or maybe you already are. And when you are the person holding the microphone and standing in the front of the room, one thing that you can do is also to talk about how and why it seems like all of a sudden, right? And I want to say that's not to erase or to diminish in any way the incredible work that trans and non-binary activists and educators are doing now, but it's also important to recognize this isn't new. None of this all of a sudden part is real. Right? This is again. And if you can do that, if you can interrupt these silences and point to why they exist, not just, oh, it's a thing that was sort of gone for a while, but why and what we got instead and how it has not served trans and non-binary and genderqueer people, then you will be resisting the silence around trans people and sexuality with me, with us, and that's what I would really like. Thank you.